Well, greetings, my Preaching in Purple family. Welcome back to another week of Summit Up Saturday. I'm Reverend Dr. Dwaylinda Alexander, and I'm so grateful that you are here with us as we continue through our new study this year of Women of the Bible. If you are just joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so grateful that you have found some time in your Saturday to spend with us and to check out today's video. In case you are new, just so that you know, you can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, look at previous videos and studies over the years, and get to know what we do here at Preaching in Purple. And so I am the founder and curator of Preaching in Purple. It is a digital space for us to come together and study scripture, reason together, different topics. I never desire for anyone to think like me, in the words of Reverend Dr. Howard John Wesley, but I just want us thinking. And so we come together to reason, to dig underneath the text, to interrogate the text and look for what is not there and what's not typically lifted. And so hence here we are with our study of the women of the Bible. We are together every second and fourth Saturday of every month. You'll see some ministry partners and friends of mine throughout this year that I'm very excited about. And so I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. So let's jump right in for today. All right, we are going to be in Exodus chapter 2. And I'm going to read verses 5 through 10. I'm reading from the English Standard Version today. And Exodus 2, verse 5 says, "Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, 'This is one of the Hebrews' children.' Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, 'Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?' And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Go.' So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages.' So the woman took the child and nursed him." Verse 10 says, "When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because she said, 'I drew him out of the water.'" And so today, for just a few minutes, I want us to talk about Pharaoh's daughter and her role in the upbringing and the saving, depending on how you read some of the commentaries, in her indirect way of saving the Israelite people by way of saving Moses. And so if you're familiar with this passage of scripture, if you're familiar with the text, then you know that Pharaoh had put out an order for all male Hebrew babies and all male Hebrew children to be killed. There's no other way around that. That's what the order was. And so when Moses is born, of course, his mother is working to hide him, to protect him from this order that has been sent out. He gets to be about 3 months old. And she, couldn't hide him anymore. And so she takes him, puts him in a basket. She covers him up, and she puts him and places him in the reeds and the high grass and things like that along the riverbank. And so his sister, who we later on in scripture find out we're talking about Miriam, and Moses' mother's name is Jochebed. So his sister, of course, she is watching all of this play out as their mother covers Moses, puts him in this basket, and puts him along the riverbank. And so, of course, Pharaoh's daughter, she's out bathing, and this basket is discovered, sees the child, identifies him as a Hebrew child, which there is a lot of debate and conversation around how she may have been able to identify him as a Hebrew child, whether it was based upon circumcision. There are those who would suggest that it could have been something in the difference in skin tone, ethnicity, but there are different suggestions as to how she knew, but she knew that he was one of the Hebrew children. And she decides to go against her father's orders, to go against what Pharaoh had decreed for all Hebrew boys to be killed. And she does not do that, but rather she takes Moses, which she names him herself, takes him into her care and just has a Hebrew woman to nurse him. Now, ironically enough, wonderfully enough, I guess you could say, because Miriam has been on the scene watching all of this play out for her brother, she is the one who says, hey, you want me to find a nurse who can take care of him, and brings his own mother to him to still be the one to be able to publicly tend to him, take care of him, nurse him. And I say publicly, the Pharaoh's daughter knew. Of course, the women knew what was happening and what was going on in him being cared for and taken care of and nursed. And then not only that, not only does Pharaoh's daughter allow for this Hebrew woman, or ask for this Hebrew woman who ends up again being Moses' mother, to nurse him, but she also pays her. Says, I will give you your wages for nursing him. And so as time progresses on, as he grows older, he transitions from being nursed and taken care of by Jochebed to now being brought in as Pharaoh's daughter's son. And so this is a form of adoption, right? Where she takes him on and names him Moses. Now, there's even some debate around the meaning of the name Moses, that it could come from the Hebrew meaning to draw out, but then also that it is potentially the Egyptian meaning of the word for son. And so there is some debate around that, but either way, it is both fitting, considering the circumstances around Pharaoh's daughter's relationship with Moses. And so there are two other major comparisons here that I want to talk about in the identifying of who Pharaoh's daughter is in this particular text. And so now, if you look at the Midrash, and we talked about this the last time, that you have to do a lot of investigating and historical studying and contextual studying and really digging underneath the text and getting into other texts when you're talking about women of the Bible, because there's just not typically a lot in the 66 books concerning the women. You got to go do a little bit more studying. And so when you get into the Midrash, and you get a little bit more historical context, there is an understanding that the daughter that is being talked about here, Pharaoh's daughter that's being talked about here in Exodus 2, is also the same daughter who's being talked about in First Chronicles. And so First Chronicles 4 and 17 to be exact. And so when you look at the name, when you pronounce it in English, Bethiah is the name that you'll see. And so there are some that would suggest that this is the same daughter that's being discussed in Exodus 2 and First Chronicles 4, that her name is Bethiah. And excuse me. And so it's important always, right, that if we can name the women who are doing the work, then we want to be able to do that, right? But then when you go and you study Womanist Midrash, Dr. Will Gaffney suggests that this is not the same woman. She does not parallel these two texts, but says that she actually calls her Sheshan or Shishan, Sheshan. Okay. This is actually who Dr. Gaffney refers to Pharaoh's daughter in Exodus 2 as, and she identifies her as an ally to the Hebrews. In our current context, we understand the importance of there being allies to oppressed groups who need the support, right? Who need someone who is willing to exercise their privilege on behalf of the oppressed. And so Dr. Gaffney identifies Pharaoh's daughter as an ally to the Hebrew people, that she does utilize her privilege while also not avoiding dismantling that privilege, right? And so she utilizes her privilege to save Moses, to have him nursed, and then brings him into her own care to be adopted as her son. And as the text goes on and time goes on, we know that Moses makes the decision to stand with his own people. That's further down in the reading in the text, some things you can study on your own. But this initial moment is to focus on what Pharaoh's daughter has done, whether we consider her Bethiah or whether we consider her Sheshan, what Pharaoh's daughter has done in this moment of saving Moses' life and going against her father's decree. There is always danger in going against the majority voice. There is always danger in going against an edict, a declaration, a law. There's always danger in going against that. But it's a danger that some folks are willing to risk and encounter on the behalf of folks who are oppressed. It's a danger that some folks are willing to say, I'll go into that fight on your behalf because we believe in what's right. And so that is just something that matters, that lifts, an idea, a thought that's lifted from the text based on her actions. And again, some of the commentaries in Midrash talk about how because of her actions, because of the daughter's actions, that she indirectly contributes to the saving of the Israelite people, because we know what Moses will go on to do, right? And so it is always important that first and foremost, you'll hear me say this probably every week that we're together. It's always important to do the digging and do the work to understand the importance of the women in the text. It's always important that if you can do the work to name who they are, to put a name to who these women are, because they had names, they had lives, they had faces, they had identities, to put a name to who they are, not just by identifying them through their male counterparts or male connections and relationships, but who they are in their own identity. And then it is important to learn the lesson from the work that these women are doing. Learn the lesson from the work that Bethiah does or that Sheshan does by being an ally on behalf of the Hebrews, by choosing to go against the big dominant body, by choosing to go against her own father who's in charge and making these declarations and decrees to say that thing I don't believe in, that thing's not right. And I would rather side with the oppressed. I would rather side with those who are in need and exercise my privilege to save or exercise my privilege in a way to support their cause than to stay partnered in even my own flesh and blood, to stay partnered with them against who and what's right. And so I told you all from the beginning, these lessons are not intended to be sermons, but there may sometimes be something that just preaches good to your soul. But this is more to be educational. This is meant more to be educational, to share with you information that you may not know about some of these dynamic women in the text. What do you know? What have you known? I want y'all to talk to me. Comment, send your emails to preachinginpurple@gmail.com. I want to hear back from you. What do you know about Pharaoh's daughter? What have you read? What have you learned and studied? Or what did you know before today? What new information did you hear today? And then y'all, let me know, what are some of the resources that you study when you are in your own scriptural time, your own time of study, your personal Bible study time? What are some of those resources that you use that help you interrogate the text and dig under the text? And then for our time coming up, now I've already, be honest with you, I got a schedule laid out because I like to plan. But maybe there are some particular women of the Bible that you want to hear more about, that you want us to dig into together. Send those names, send those scriptures, send your questions. We love to hear from you. Again, I'm Reverend Dr. Dwaylinda Alexander. I pray that you have heard something today that has piqued your curiosity, answered some questions that you may have had, that you've learned something new, and that you'll continue to journey with us as we study the women of the Bible. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.